Yo, I'm making a split-screen medieval RTS game, and here's my progress so far. So I don't normally do these types of videos, but I thought, hey, I'm making this game, it's taking time, why not tell people about it? And let me preface this by saying I didn't really record a whole lot from the early development, so this is where the current state of the game is after maybe about a month and a half. So I've noticed a severe lack of split-screen RTS games. They don't really exist. Tooth and Tail is like the only one I've ever seen. That and maybe Sock Pop's Kingpin, but that's it. So with the combined joy that I've had from playing RTS games and local split-screen games with my friends and brothers, I decided to make a split-screen RTS. Medieval is also kind of sick, so that's why it's medieval. So here it is. You got this little dude running around with him, swinging his shit, get your resources, trees for wood, rocks for stone, berries for berries, and obviously cows for berries as well. As for building with any RTS, I wanted to go with a simpler style because on a controller you don't really have a whole lot of buttons as much as you would on like a keyboard for a regular RTS, as well as the UI because it's split screen. How the building works is you would start out with a house and you would place this down and that would increase your population, but if you felt like getting archers or swordsmen or whatever, then you would upgrade that house. And so reducing the amount of building options, I think, doesn't overwhelm the player as much, at least in the UI, so it's a little bit easier to grasp as an RTS. A little bit of development here. The building system also used to be just place building on your head, but then hearing from my brother on how he wanted to make a perfectly symmetrical OCD-induced castle, I added a bit of grid placement. So you can actually line things up and make it look nice and pretty. As for units, I said archer and swordsman. Those are in the game currently, but I found this sick pack on the Unity Asset Store, specifically for an RTS game, and in the exact style that I was kind of going for, so it was perfect. Super cool. And the current units that are in the game are archers, swordsmen, shieldmen, which have more shield, crazy, and the longbow, which is like upgraded archers. And I plan to add a lot more cavalry, spearmen, siege units for sure, because I plan on having walls, like battering rams, and mages actually too. A big game right now is Age of Empires, and they're like what I get a lot of inspiration from when it comes to medieval RTSs, but they don't have magic, and I love mages, so I wanted to put mages in the game, and I don't know what they could be. Maybe they could be like a cool tornado throwing guy, or like a firewall, throw up a firewall guy. I don't really know. Tell me what you think. If you have ideas, I need ideas, so that would be good. I also have a system for putting units in formations, and this is my favorite part because you can throw like swordsmen in the front, archers in the back, and you can just send them all forward at the same time, and I think it looks awesome. A part of the initial development was the movement, and initially I had a movement script for both the player and units. It kind of just worked for both, and I wanted jumping and leg movement for vertical terrains, like inverse kinematics, but I eventually strayed away from that because I wanted to improve the graphics a little bit, and it was just simpler to go with the animations that I found rather than like modifying everything. Also, for the pathfinding, initially I didn't have any pathfinding, and I had the character move from point A to point B, straight line. All of the units did that, and this would cause them to get stuck on walls. Not very good at all. And I have a previous game, Birds and Blades, go check it out. They also do that. They move from point A to point B. There's no pathfinding. So I did some research on pathfinding, learned about A star and the one with the arrows on the ground. I don't really know what that is. But in the end, I went with Unity's Atmos system, and that was disappointing but also fantastic because unfortunately I just ditched my whole movement script that I had made and spent so long on, but now I have the exact thing that I was looking for, and it works perfectly, and all I need to do is add the nav mesh agent component, and that is it, and it just works. For the map, or world, or whatever you want to call it, I wanted to make it randomized, but also have it balanced at the same time. In Birds and Blades, the resources were random across the whole map, and I feel this made things a bit unfair for some players, because some players would get a lot of stone, or some players would get a lot of trees. and it was just way too random, and half the map would be empty or something, right? So the midpoint that I decided to go with here is using a grid system. So for whatever resource type or whatever I want to place on the map, it uses scriptable objects to dictate some placement rules. And if you don't know, scriptable objects are basically just a way of storing data in a container, and then I can duplicate that and change values depending on what I want. So for each of these, they have a grid where they place one of whatever resource they have. Let's just say stone. So they place one stone in each grid square, and then after that, it's random. So it'll place it anywhere. But at least there's one in every part of the map. So it's not perfectly an even playing field, but this makes the resources a little more accessible to players. There's also farms. Farms are in the game. They collect resources nearby. Lumber mills for trees, mines for stone. Farms don't really collect anything nearby. I feel like doing this because units are the main way of fighting, and they cost mostly food. So if you felt like targeting food, you could just have everything contain your base. I don't know if I'm gonna change this or not. I don't know if I like it. It works for now. Again, if you have ideas, let me know. And my goal with like hitting things and getting resources and then having farms is that in the beginning, it's more tedious to collect resources, and that's mainly what you're focusing on. But once you start getting an army, you would have the automatic collection of resources. So you wouldn't focus as much on getting resources. Obviously, you would, pay attention a little bit, but not as much. And the reason I'm doing that is because you can't really do that when you have just a character running around. So this limitation is intentional. I do want a character. Another thing you might be wondering is, Max, I don't see any villagers. What's happening? Where are my villagers? Yeah, so I didn't want to add villagers because I wanted to make it a little teeny tiny itsy bitsy more casual. And so when you select your units, this is how you select your units, by the way. You can just know that you're only selecting the guys that are the fighting guys. And if I were to have villagers mixed in with that, like, would it also select the villagers when you select your guys? When you this is how you select all your guys, by the way, double tapping Y or triangle, whatever console you're on. Would it select all of the villagers, and then when you wanted them to go attack, would the villagers come, or would you have a separate button for villagers? And it just doesn't flow. So that's why there's no villagers. If I figure out a way to do it, I might add them later. I don't know. Again, like I said, this game is still very early in development, so lots of things can change. And there's also an upgrade for 20 of the farms. Instead of getting resources passively, it upgrades the amount you get per hit by 1. So you could, in theory, go for the crazy I'm the only one collecting resources build and ditch the passive collection entirely. It's up to you. I don't know. There's also research in the game. I don't think we need to dive too heavily on research. It's exactly what you think. Research. You can research something like food production increases by 50%, and it takes time. And then when it's done, you research the next thing. It's basically like any other research in any game. I also really love when games have a warm-up area before you actually start playing the game. I come from a lot of Rocket League, so they do this with training while you're queuing for a game. And if you've played the game Stick Fight before, you also know that they have a little fight arena before the game actually starts. So this initial practice area, a start area, practice area, works both as a spot to test mechanics or to teach a friend the game or controls if they're learning. I'm a big fan of physical UI as well, which is actually just called diegetic UI. But it's when the game character themselves can actually interact with the UI instead of it just being some made-up buttons that just the player can see. And that's what these buttons here are like, the ones for changing color or the ones for adding resources. I just think it's a lot more interesting than just having like a menu for changing teams. And that's kind of where we're at. A big plan is adding walls. Walls are a big one. I definitely want to add walls. Right now I do have a current way of making walls. They're just not really what I want quite yet, just because I need to also add the siege units in, and I don't know how walls are going to be destroyed, whether it should be in like sections or just the whole wall. Should walls be connected with towers? How do players build walls? Lots of things that I haven't really put much thought to. So I've kind of set it aside for now. I'll work on it later. I don't really know. I'm going to speedrun the rest of these ideas here. There's veterancy. Units level up and get better the more damage you do with them. It incentivizes you to keep your units alive longer. Player abilities. You can hit things or spawn a tornado or shoot an arrow. I don't know. You can think of like a nuke from 8-bit armies. Lots of RTSs have super weapons. Volcano Demon. I've never played League of Legends, but I'm pretty sure if you kill the fire guy in the middle, your team gets a buff. I don't know, call me on that if that's wrong. So the same thing could happen here, but your troops get like fire damage or something. I don't know. And then islands. I think having height variation in the world would be very cool, because you can have like more range per unit, or they can do more damage. Right now units do have more range when they're up higher, but I don't have any like random generation in the game yet. And that's actually it, I think. I know I didn't do a whole lot of backstory on where I'm coming from with this. Just know that it's kind of an improvement upon my last RTS game called Birds and Blades. If you want to go check it out, that's available on itch.io. It's very buggy, but you know, it's playable. I hope you're interested in this game as much as I am. I really have enjoyed the progress I'm putting in so far, and where it could go, what it could potentially be. Like I said, there's not really many controller-based RTS games, so I feel that this is going to be a cool game. If you like this video, you can like. If you dislike this video, you can dislike. Subscribe if you're interested in the game. Yeah, that's it.